I have something here in my pocket that I got a couple of years ago that is really kind of special to me. I shared this as well with the children today in the children's sermon. And it is this towel. You see, I got this towel about 2 years ago when I went to go watch the Dodgers. And it wasn't just any Dodgers baseball game. This was Game 5 of the National League Championship Series against the Milwaukee Brewers. Not only was it a playoff game against the Brewers, with the winner ultimately of the series ultimately going on to play in the World Series, but Clayton Kershaw was on the mound. Oh boy, was I excited. Now, the game didn't start off all that great. In the third inning, the Brewers scored a run, and we were down 1-0. And let me tell you, there wasn't a whole lot of towel waving or anything like that. Nope, we were pretty down. But then the fifth inning came around. We had a runner at first base, as I recall. Clayton Kershaw was actually supposed to be on deck, but he wasn't standing there. Yasiel Puig was standing on deck waiting to pinch hit for him. It looked like Kershaw was going to be lifted from the game, and once again, Clayton Kershaw would live up to his reputation, and as magnificent a player and a pitcher he is in the regular season, he was once again going to fail in the postseason. But then Austin Barnes hit a double right down the left field line. In fact, not only was it right down the left field line, but it was right towards me because I was seated field level, left field line, just inside the foul pole. Boy, if I had been a few rows up, I would have been tempted maybe to reach over and try to grab the ball myself. Of course, that would have gotten me ejected from the game, so I probably wouldn't have done that. Let me tell you, we started waving our towels, we were cheering, we were enthused. I don't know if you have ever been a part of something like that. Dodger Stadium holds over 50,000 people, and most everybody there was a fan of the Dodgers. It was pumping. It was loud. It was raucous. We were into it. And then came the fifth inning. In the fifth inning, Justin Turner knocked in a run. Right after him, Yasiel Puig did pinch a hit, and he knocked in a run. We were ahead 3-1. Clayton Kershaw retired the last 13 batters that he faced. That's just over 4 innings worth of work. He went through 7 innings. As much as people talk about how terrible his record is in the postseason, he has more games with 7 innings pitched and 2 or fewer runs than anybody ever in baseball. Take that, Kershaw here. As I said, there is just something about being a part of the crowd. There is just something about having thousands, in this case over 50,000 people, cheering for, rooting for the exact same thing. In our Old Testament reading, the Israelites had just made it to Mount Sinai. They had just made it. They had spent 3 months to get there. And now the Lord God calls Moses up to the mountain. And he says, tell the Israelites this. Tell the Israelites, remember who I am? Remember that I was the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt, who bore you on eagle's wings. Remember how I protected you when you were being chased by the Egyptian army, how you made it across the Red Sea. Remember all that? I'm going to be there for you. All you have to do is to keep this covenant that I'm going to be making with you. All you have to do is remember my commandments. So Moses came down from the mountain, and that's what he told the Israelites. He brought the elders to him and said exactly what the Lord told him to say. Now, I can imagine that the Israelites, 3 months after escaping Egypt with their lives, were probably still riding that high. They were probably all still pumped. And so the elders that Moses had called, almost with one voice, said, yes, just as you say it, Moses, that's what we're going to do. It was easy for them to say that. I mean, they were riding that high. They were pumped. They made it out of Egypt after all. And Moses says this to them, and they say, yes, that's what we're going to do. I'm also reminded of that for Palm Sunday, that very first Palm Sunday, when Jesus came riding into Jerusalem on a donkey's colt. And what happened then? People laid their cloaks down, they put palm fronds down in front of them, and the chorus of hosannas echoed through the streets. It was easy to be a follower of Jesus there that very first Palm Sunday, wasn't it? It's not always easy, though. Let's take a look at what's going on in our country today. We are seeing stuff right now that I do not recall seeing in my lifetime, really. Maybe within my remembered lifetime would be a better way of putting it. The Rodney King riots that we saw in the early 1990s don't seem to have anything close to the impact what we're seeing today. I think you probably have to go back to the 1960s before you see something where we have so much racial tension, we have so much conflict, social conflict. And right now, I'll tell you, it is easy to go out and protest. It is easy to go out there with thousands of your closest friends, or even people that you have never met before. It is easy to go out there and raise your hand in the air and say that Black Lives Matter. Black lives do matter. That's the appropriate response. If somebody says to you, do Black Lives Matter, if they say Black Lives Matter, the response is, yes, they do. In the same way, though, if somebody says to me, do all lives matter? Well, of course they do. Those two statements are certainly not mutually exclusive. And again, if somebody says, blue lives matter, guess what? The answer once again is, yes, they do. All those things are true. Why should we try to argue any of them? Just say yes. Yes, they matter. So like I said, when you're out there with thousands of people and you're all chanting, you're all asking for the same thing, and you want to see change, that is easy to do it when you're out there with thousands of other people that want the same thing as you do. But sometimes we go too far, and we've seen that too, haven't we? When you've got thousands of people that take it too far, when you've got even hundreds of people, and I don't know what the numbers are, I just know that there are more than they should be that are going beyond protest. There are more people that should be that are breaking windows. There are more people that should be that are looting businesses and stealing from people, stealing the hard-won, hard-fought-for fruits of their labors. And these people aren't just privileged white people, they are people of all racial and ethnicity backgrounds. There are far too many people that are setting cities on fire. There are far too many people that are beating people in the streets. And I hate to break this to you, but it is really easy to get caught up in that and not say something when the wrong thing happens. That's what is hard to do. That's why it was hard for those other 3 police officers to stop Derek Chauvin. I mean, think about it. One of them was almost certainly his partner. They all worked together. Heck, they all played for the same team. There was a camaraderie there. These guys were in it together. It's hard to speak up against your friends. It is hard to go against the grain. Now, every one of those officers should have done something. Heck, I could make a case that some of the passerbys should have done something. I mean, George Floyd should not have died. And somebody should have had the wherewithal to put an end to what was happening. But guess what? That is hard. You know, there are other things that are hard. I was watching the news, and they were showing footage of some of the protests in Los Angeles. And there was a group of men, I believe they were men. They had black hoods on, masks, all you could see was their eyes. They had tire irons, and they were breaking the windows into a building. I'm assuming it was a store, but they were just calmly walking along, breaking windows. And then there was a young lady. This young lady couldn't have been more than 5'3". I don't think she weighed more than 120 to 125 pounds. She ducked underneath and through these men. They were armed men, they had tire irons. They were significantly larger than her, and she ducked under them. And she blocked their path. She held her arms out like this, and she stood in front of the windows that she was breaking. Sorry, that they were breaking. They had some words for her. They said some things, but she held her ground. In the end, they walked away. That was hard. It's a hard thing to put yourself in harm's way. A young lady do it, and that young lady to me is a hero. I'll tell you something else that's hard. I was watching some of the protests just the other day in St. Paul, Minnesota. In Minneapolis, Minnesota. And there, in the middle of the protest, was the mayor. And the mayor was there to say that he agrees with the protesters that Black Lives Matter, that he was in support of police reform, and that the life of George Floyd was worth more than what he got. In fact, the mayor of Minneapolis was on his knees in solidarity with the protesters. And then, the person that was leading the protest at that point, the person that was leading the chants of Black Lives Matter, and there may have been some no justice, no peace, but she was leading the chants. She looked down on the mayor of Minneapolis on his knees, wearing his COVID-19 mask. She looked down at him and she said, "Mr. Mayor, do you right now, here and now, in front of all these people, do you promise to support the defunding and the dismantling of the Minneapolis Police Department?" The easy thing would have been to go along with the crowd. That would have been the easy thing to do. But the mayor didn't do that. He said, no, I cannot say that. I do not believe that. I believe that we need to have a police department. And at that, the crowd turned on him. And they started chanting, "Go home, Jacob." That was his first name. "Go home, Jacob, go home. Go home, Jacob, go home." And he went home. Kind of like in the gospel reading today, where Jesus tells his disciples that when you go out to a town or into somebody's house and they don't accept you, shake the dust from your feet and leave them. It doesn't make any sense to spend your time beating your head against the wall when you know nothing's going to change. Maybe you weren't the one that was going to be the one that was going to make the change that was needed. But since we're at the gospel now, let's take a look at it, because Jesus knew. In fact, Jesus was warning his disciples. He was warning them that it's not always going to be easy. Now, certainly, there are going to be times where it is easy. And it was probably easy for the disciples. I mean, let's face it, if you're going out and healing the sick and raising the dead and throwing out unclean spirits, boy, that, if you can do that, it's probably going to be easy. Jesus warned them, you're going to be taken from the synagogues and flogged. You are going to be pulled before governors. And that's not going to be easy. So, that is kind of what the message is today. It's easy when it's easy. But you know, it's not always going to be easy. Let's go back to Palm Sunday. That first Palm Sunday, when it was so easy to lay down palms in front of Jesus, and the hosannas were echoing throughout the town, the city. That was easy. But if you were to ask Peter, just a few days later, how easy it was, when he followed behind Jesus as he went to Herod and then Pilate and all that. And when somebody said, "Hey, aren't you one of Jesus' followers?" How easy was it for Peter? Peter, on whom the church was founded. How easy was it for Peter to say something so simple as, "Yes, I knew him"? That was not easy at all. And let's take a look at the Israelites there in front of Mount Sinai, just having been rescued and taken out of the land of Egypt by God. It was easy right then to say, "Yes, we are going to do exactly what you say, God. We are all for it. We are with you." Well, it wasn't very much longer after that. More than 40 days, I know, but that really wasn't that much longer. When they were pulling their gold together and melting it down, and they were worshiping a golden calf. Because it wasn't easy to say yes to God when everybody else was afraid and turning towards something else. And here's the good news. Here is the good news. It does not matter how many times you stumble. It does not matter how many times you get up again. It doesn't matter how many times the Israelites screwed up, how badly they screwed up. Every time it happened, God welcomed them back with open arms, like that prodigal son. And the same thing goes for us. Every time we don't live up to our best selves, every time we go along with the crowd when maybe we shouldn't, every time we don't go along with the crowd when we should, every time we screw up, God is there through His grace, through His love, through the sacrifice that Jesus Christ made. welcoming us in open arms once again. That is certainly the good news. So even Clayton Kershaw, who has blown more postseason games than anybody that I can remember, there is still forgiveness for him. Let's go ahead. Lord, thank you that not all times are hard. Thank you for the times where it's easy to stand up for what is right, for the things that you value. Thank you for making Black Lives Matter and Yellow Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter and all lives matter. Thank you for being able to see beyond all of that. Thank you for understanding. We're not always going to do things right. Thank you for understanding that those 4 police officers are just as much loved by you. And that the rioters and the looters are just as beloved by you as any of us, as the people that are trying to make the world a better place. You love us all. Thank you for that, and help us to understand that and to love one another the way you want us to love each other. Lord, we lift you up. We ask for your forgiveness, and we thank you for your unending, amazing, radical gift of grace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.